Hey, it's Nicole, and welcome to the Studio Nicole Podcast. Before we get into this incredible episode, I just wanted to send a huge thank you to this community. Thank you for listening, for sharing my episodes. I love that you have joined me on this journey. I started this podcast because I love connecting with people. I love hearing those stories of why people do what they do. At its core, this show is about taking the leap and learning as you go. It's a celebration of creativity, resilience, and of course, connection. I don't know about you, but I feel so much inspiration listening to people's stories. So thank you for taking the time for yourself to listen to this podcast. And today's episode, well, it's a game changer. I'm talking to a person who literally saves lives. When she hears me say that, she might roll her eyes at me because that is just who she is, very humble. But once you listen to this episode, I'm sure you'll agree with me. I'm talking to Val Caldwell, a woman who went from managing a restaurant to marrying a farmer near Kenton, Manitoba, to opening her own daycare, to now being one of Manitoba's leading voices when it comes to talking about kids, technology, and the absolute chaos of the online world. Val's journey is wild. She didn't set out to be a speaker. She just noticed that parenting in the digital age was, well, a lot. Then one day, she heard a speaker who lit her on fire. Sitting in the audience herself, she thought, I could do this. I need to do this. And she did big time. She started facilitating for Child and Family Services, creating a game to help educate rural communities, built her own program, and when CFS funding stopped and she essentially lost her job, schools were like, nope, we still need this. And that is when Val went solo and created something magical. In 2024 alone, Val gave 170 presentations, visited 44 schools across 14 school divisions, spoke at 7 conferences and 24 hockey teams, trained 6 groups for CFS, and reached 7,700 youth and 1,350 adults. Yep. She is a one-woman movement. We talk about some heavy stuff in this episode: online safety, social media pressure, suicide, tech addiction, all of it. But in true me style, there's also lots of laughter, real talk, and some bloopers about beanie babies at the end that you do not want to miss. So grab your tea, pull up a chair, walk your dog, because this is a conversation that might just change how you think about screen time, TikTok, and that kid in your life who is surrounded by screens. Young Val, when you were growing up, did you think someday I'm going to be a public speaker?
I better tell this or my mom would tell it for me. I would do the dishes. My mom had a mirror behind the sink and I would practice speaking because I was going to be a famous actress and I was going to win an Academy Award. And so I would practice like what your face looks like. But did I ever think I would be a public speaker? No, that wasn't even remotely on the radar. No.
So what was the moment when you thought like, okay, this is the path I'm going on. I'm going to become a public speaker. When was that kind of that turning point?
Yeah, I think through the work with CFS, I was in front of people a lot. I didn't imagine being in a room of 500 people. That wasn't on my radar. But I think the more passionate I became about the work that I do, the more in depth I got into the issues that kids are facing online and sort of that lack of understanding between where kids are and where parents are. That really drove me to get out more, put myself out there more. As much as I'm an extrovert and love people, I still get very overwhelmed when I speak in public. I get nervous. People always ask me if I'm nervous. I think nerves are good because it shows that you're invested.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I certainly was never driven to be in the public eye, but it just sort of happened with, I think just the passion for the work that I do, kind of if that's how I have to get it out there, then that's the avenue I take.
Well, when we were talking on the phone briefly a few days ago, you did mention that before you were working with CFS, before you even did that, you yourself went and saw somebody speak. Now, did you say that was kind of the turning point?
Yeah. So what got me involved in the CFS work was I went to the Elspeth Reed Family Resource Center in Brandon, and the amazing Tammy Phillips was facilitating the How to Talk So Kids Will Listen. Oh. And A, I wanted to be her friend because she's amazing. And B, I was so just captivated by the information and it just aligned so closely with my philosophies on parenting. And So I came home that night and I told my husband those two things. I'm going to be her friend, which she is a dear friend of mine
love
now.
that.
And I want to do what she does.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what that meant. And then a few weeks later, just kind of 6 degrees of Val Caldwell, I was speaking with an incredible woman named Dorothy Cater, who she used to work for the Assiniboine North Parent-Child Coalition. And I told her that I attended these programs and thought it was incredible. She ended up being very good friends with Marilyn Sterling Blanco, who ended up becoming my greatest mentor in life. And so she called her and said, hey, I have this lady and I think she'd be really good at facilitating and I want you to meet her. So I went to Brandon and had coffee with MSB and yeah, they offered me to do some training with Tammy, and that's sort of how it all started. And yeah, that's kind of where my path began, was just putting it out to the universe. I had no idea how I was going to get there, but I thought that would be super cool.
I recently did watch one of your presentations. I think it was to Hockey
Hockey
Canada,
Manitoba?
Hockey Manitoba. I saw it on YouTube. I just watched it a few days ago. And one thing I noticed was just how you, like, your confidence. I felt like you just commanded the room.
Oh boy.
In a good way, of course. And I felt like you just had so much confidence. Like, has it always been like that? Like, what was your first, like, speaking event?
Oh,
how did that go?
Yeah, it's funny because I think there's a lot of perceived confidence there. I think my passion for the work that I do probably makes me come across as more confident. I was terrified to do the Hockey Manitoba presentation.
I imagine.
I was honored to be asked. It actually started with Yellowhead. They had me come in and speak to their AAA teams, and sort of the feedback got out there, and then Hockey Manitoba asked me to come and speak. But yeah, I was terrified that day. So the fact that you say comes across as confident is actually quite funny. I never watch videos of me speaking.
Okay,
I don't.
Really?
Yeah,
You should watch it. It's quite good.
Not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of watching
good.
myself.
You did very well.
Now you've told everyone it's out there. So
I'll put
well
the
done,
link.
Nicole.
I'll put the link in the podcast comment section link.
Oh,
yeah.
you're funny.
Let's get more into like what you talk about in these sessions. Now, kind of like in a nutshell, what is your goal when you walk into a room, into a school?
Yeah.
What is your top goal?
So for kids, my biggest goal is to make a connection with them. So I think my biggest fear would be to become irrelevant. I try so hard to stay on top of things and really be able to understand the world they're living in. I want to connect with them so that they can understand that I'm not there to criticize them. I'm not there to tell them, technology is all bad and they should never use it. What my goal is just to provide for them the honest truth of what the dangers are and what we see going on. And it amazes me still to this day how honest kids are when you make a genuine connection with them, and they don't feel judged. And so that's kind of my number one goal with kids. I just want to provide tools to keep them safe. With the adults, it's more... and this is no disrespect meant to adults. It's a difficult world to understand, but I find a lot of adults just don't have a hot clue what's going on online. Like, for example, Roblox. Parents will tell me their kids play Roblox, like the game Roblox.
And what is Roblox? I don't know either.
Yeah, so it's a platform.
I feel like I'm not very relevant.
You have to come to a session.
Yeah.
Roblox is a platform with over 40 million games, and a lot of them are user-generated platforms. So there's violence and there's pornography and there's like blood and gore. And so although there are parts of Roblox that are very appropriate for young kids, there's other parts that are very inappropriate. So my goal with adults is just, again, to talk openly and honestly about the real dangers that exist on the internet and provide tools for how to keep their kids safe. And the biggest tool is the relationship. None of it matters if you don't build that relationship of trust.
Like the relationship with their child.
Yes. Yeah. To be able to come to them, to be able to say, look, I messed up. I did something. I need your help.
Right.
Right. When I ask kids, it's interesting. When I ask adults what the number one reason is they think kids don't tell things, adults typically will say because they're afraid they'll get their device taken away. Kids rarely ever say that. Kids usually say, I'm afraid my parents will be disappointed in me.
And do you give like advice to parents, like how to build that relationship with them?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
What would be like the most common tip you give them?
Well, I think it has to start from the time they're little, right? You have to have open, honest conversations. I also remind parents to be mindful of how they speak about those issues. So,
Yes.
if they see something on the news about a teenager who sent a nude and then they make sort of derogatory comments about
Yeah.
their choice or their behavior, your kids hear that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so really trying to help parents understand that we are the mirror to kids and they're going to
Yeah.
learn from us.
Yeah.
So you have to try not, and it's difficult. I know sometimes it's hard not to judge those situations, but I think we have to be very mindful of how we
Yeah.
speak in front of kids when it comes to things like that.
I can imagine it being hard to be a parent, like always having to be on in a way. Like, nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
But I used to be a teacher and I'd hear kids say things and I'm like, I know, I'm like, that came
Yes.
directly from
Yeah.
your parents' mouth.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. That's not from a 5-year-old.
Yeah. And so, like, what do you tell parents who say like they're struggling with this? Like, what can they do?
Well, and I really try to get that across to parents. Like people always call me an expert. I'm not an expert.
Right.
I'm learning as I go because it is impossible to be an expert because it changes constantly. And so I do this full time. I eat, sleep, and breathe this, and I don't know everything. So
Right.
I really try to put parents at ease that they can't be expected to know all of this, but education is power. So, Google's your best friend. What's the language of sexting? What are the top 10 apps kids are using? Get to know the world that your kids are living in and kind of familiarize yourself. The number of adults that I know who permit 10-year-olds to be on Snapchat, but they've never been on the platform of Snapchat.
Yeah.
So I always equate it to a playground. We wouldn't take a 2-year-old to a playground and just drop them off and leave them there and hope that it's safe. So the internet is a playground and adults need to be familiar with the playground.
And so a lot of this, I'm not sure if it's because I was in the education field, but I don't know. A lot of it seems like, don't take your cell phone to bed. Like,
Yes.
a lot of that seems very common sense to me.
Yeah.
So why do you think some parents are like really struggling with that?
I think a lot of it is habit. If I'm going to be frank, I think a lot of parents take their devices to their rooms. So
Yeah, that's true.
and that's the other thing I always tell parents, right? We're the
Yeah.
mirror to kids.
Oh, yeah.
So how we act is far more impactful than the words we say. So to me, in our house, it was always the cell phones don't go in the bedroom, but that was for the adults as well.
Yeah.
Right? You go to bed to go to sleep. So I think a lot of it is peer pressure. A lot of my friends have given in because everybody else has it. I think a lot of it is circumstance. Like some hockey teams will create a group chat on Snapchat.
Right.
Well, then the kid has to get Snapchat to
Yeah.
be part of the group chat. And
Yeah.
and I always think back to my mom saying, if everybody jumped off a bridge, right? That
Yeah.
whole thing. But I think it's hard for parents now to be those parents that say you're not getting a cell phone till you're
Yeah.
16 because we see kids in kindergarten with devices.
Wild.
So I think it's harder and harder for parents. Sometimes I think it's easier, honestly, to just give in. And all as parents, we've all done it. It's easier to just let them have the chocolate at 9 at night so they stop whining, right? And then I think sometimes parents don't know how to pare it back after
Yeah.
they've kind of started those habits. I think it's easier if you can implement the rules long before they ever have the technology. But
I know, like, I don't know why I always remember this, but growing up, we had one computer in the family room. And I always remember hearing on the news or wherever I heard it that, keep the computer in the family room, facing the couch so you can see what they're doing. There's always ways around that, but always have that one family computer. And as as I was a teacher and technology kind of, came about. But now literally those smartphones, they have the whole world like in their pockets.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, the whole playground thing, like you wouldn't just drop your kid off at a playground. And so what are when you're in those, giving these talks, what are some of your like warnings to parents, like of like what's out there?
So I do focus on a wide gamut of bullying to start with, right? When I was a kid, if you were mean to me at school, I could still get away from it and go home.
Right.
And now that bullying, a lot of times continues on through the evening on their different platforms. We talk about the heavier stuff like sexting and sextortion and the pressure to, exchange images and the reality is I always try to remind parents that behavior never changes. It's just the medium the kids have that's changed, right? I mean, when I was a teenager, there was sexual pressure, there was pressure to drink alcohol and smoke cigarettes. And so kids have always been under pressure. This isn't something new. It's just the medium that these kids have. Back in my day, if you were going to send a nude, you'd have to wait for the film to finish and then send it away to get developed. And right, there was that impulsivity simply wasn't there. Even if you took it with a Polaroid, you still had to get it to the other person, right? So I always caution parents and adults that none of us know what this is like because none of us grew up like this. So judging kids is losing kids. So we have to try to put ourselves in that position and say, what would it have been like to be alone in my bedroom, kind of spicy talking with somebody, and one thing leads to another and they say they really like me, and well, it seems like everybody does this. You can see how quickly an impulsive choice happens.
Yeah.
I also focus a lot on brain development, explaining to parents that prefrontal cortex doesn't start developing till early to mid-teens, doesn't finish till mid to late 20s. And boys' brains are about 18 months behind girls' brains. And so there's lots of those pieces that play into it as well.
Right.
I always use the Dan Siegel hand model of the brain. So when a person's calm and relaxed, they're in that prefrontal cortex. When they flip their lid, they're in that emotional brain. And so they lack the ability to dial into all the things that they store in the prefrontal cortex. So, how many times have we said, I've told these kids the same thing 100 times, they never listen. It's not that they don't listen. When they're calm and relaxed, they do. When they're emotional, they can't. They can't access all the stuff we teach them, right? Because when I speak with kids, they tell me all the reasons that you shouldn't talk to strangers and you shouldn't add people you don't know. But see, when they're emotional, all that stuff goes out the window. And that's when impulsive behavior happens.
So do you often say the kids tell you stories, tell you things. Do you have that as part of your sessions, or do they come to you afterwards?
They come after.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm so proud of every kid who has the courage, and parents. I have lots of parents who come afterwards and express things they're struggling with. And, I have a million stories. I remember one, I think I shared this one with you. A young girl in grade 12 came to me after a presentation and said, you were here when I was in grade 8 and I was dating a boy. And he was asking me for nudes. And I had decided that night that I was going to send nudes. And then you came and you did your presentation. And I got home and I texted him and I said, I'm not comfortable. And he broke up with me. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And so things like that, people always ask me, what is the reward in the work you do? That's the reward, right? If you can get through to one kid where they take something away and they go home and they think about it and it helps them make a different choice, then, whether there's 300 kids and only one hears something, if one hears something, that might change something significant for them. So,
well, and I noticed that on your posts, you always end each post with, what is it?
One kid at a time.
One kid at a time.
Yeah.
And so is that kind of why you end each post with that?
It is.
What started that kind of thing?
There's a cute little backstory. I have very dear friends across the Saskatchewan border, the Miller family, and Lyle Miller, who is just one of the best humans I know, would always say to me, one kid at a time, kid. So that kind of became a thing between him and I. His son, Zachary, was abducted by a pedophile a number of years ago. And
that's he's just from Saskatchewan.
Yeah, just from Whitewood, Saskatchewan.
Wow.
Yep. And so we've worked together. We used to tour through Saskatchewan. So they would do through the Canadian Center for Child Protection, they would do the Kids in the Know program with the young kids. And I would do the internet safety program with the older kids. And then we would do kind of a combined parent night. And so working with them over the years, that sort of became our thing, one kid at a time.
I think maybe I'm naive, but I always feel like, people have that mindset, it doesn't happen here.
Yes. Yeah.
But in that talk I saw on YouTube that you did, there was a number of stories, even in Brandon, what was it? It was, of people pretending to, older men pretending to be younger boys or girls.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that one I think you're referring to, there was a 33-year-old man in Brandon that posed as a teenage boy and contacted multiple girls across the city. And those stories, we could talk for hours and I could share in almost every community I visit. There's those stories because adults, that's the thing, right? I mean, obviously I'm a 54-year-old female, but I can jump on Roblox to be a 12-year-old boy named Billy really quickly.
Yeah.
And that's where kids are very trusting and they just don't get right. They understand it logically when they're here, but they think it'll never happen to me or, but this person is so nice. And that's one of the things I try to stress to parents really when they talk to their kids about stranger danger. What is stranger danger, right? How do you explain? Because somebody that they game with is their friend online.
Yeah.
Or somebody that you say they should add on Snapchat. Or so it's really having those conversations about how people make us feel. Like, what is that person saying to you that kind of makes you go, like, why is your Billy, your 12-year-old friend, asking you what school you go to, and do you walk to school or you take a bus? And right. So getting kids to understand, because what is stranger danger anymore? It's not a person hiding behind a tree.
Yeah.
So it's really changed. And I mean, statistically speaking, when a child is harmed by an adult, 93% of the time is someone they know.
Yeah.
So stranger danger never really has been the biggest danger.
Yeah.
Not to say it doesn't happen, but online, it's just a game changer. Kids, I've had kids tell me they accept somebody as a friend because their Bitmoji's hot. Right. So, I mean, they're kids, right? They're not always thinking clearly.
And, like when you're, lonely, like it's hard enough for adults. I feel like, I delete my Instagram app off my phone until I make a post, do a few things, I delete it. And because it's addictive, you just can't stop. So I can only imagine being like a little kid, lonely, maybe their parents are off, whatever. And just like looking into those, I was gonna say chat rooms. I don't think they're chat rooms anymore.
No, well, they are.
A type of chat
it's
room,
just a different type.
Yeah.
Discord is a big one that a lot of adults are not familiar with. And it's another platform usually associated with gaming. But it's kind of like the MSN Messenger of the day. So, again, they can be user created platforms. And so you can have private conversations with people. And so, it's just MSN for this generation. That's really all it is, right?
What is something that people often like misunderstand about your work, or like the families or people you work with? Do you get any like misconceptions, or people asking you like, what is it that you do or why? You know what I mean?
I think people always ask me what it is that I do. And I do find it kind of hard to explain what I do. I mean, I'm a public speaker. I'm an educator. There's different ways to explain it. I do find sometimes, like, I had a message the other day from someone asking if I could just come speak like in 2 weeks from now. And I think there's a bit of a misconception sometimes, like I'm booking a year in advance to do speaking engagements. So it's busy. I have so many schools that have supported me. Like I've been doing this 17 years. This is not new. And so, there's so many schools and administrators and teachers who have supported my work for years. And so they'll always get priority. If I have space, they're going to get the space filled before. So not to say that I won't travel to other places, but I have built up such a relationship with, within Southwestern Manitoba with schools and communities and stuff that, there's always a need for work. But I would say the biggest question I guess I get is to explain what it is that I do. And it depends on the group. Like, I mean, when I do CFS trainings, it's very much from a child protection perspective. So it's breaking down every app and how predators are accessing it and how they're connecting with kids. And when I do a hockey presentation, it's more focused on the athletic side of things, but still the online protection, right? Yeah. So it's kind of, I honestly, if I visit a Huttarian community, it's a bit of a different perspective again, because I always check in with them first. And what do you want me to talk about? What don't you want me to talk about? But here's a misconception. People always say, like, you must speak so differently on those communities. They want the same information as everyone else, right? Yeah. Whether it's an Indigenous community, kids are kids, and they're all at risk when they're online. Yeah. So, yeah.
When I watched one of your sessions online, I was like, I kind of had an idea what to expect. Maybe, okay, what is, I know she talks about this and that, but like, not only was there was practical information. So right away, we whipped out our cell phones. I did it as well. Yeah. Because it was checking the privacy settings. Yes. Yeah. I feel like, I don't know why those sites are so tricky. Yes. I remember one thing was that I didn't know back then was that I think it was Snapchat that kids have their location turned on. Yes. Yeah. And that how back in, when I was in school, you're home the whole weekend, then you go out to school on Monday and you found out, people had a party you were invited to. Yes. It is what it is. But now I noticed that some of the kids are talking after that they'll look at Saturday night and they can literally see all their friends at that person's house. And I thought that really stuck out to me. I
Yeah.
was like, that's wild.
And it's more than that. Like it's,
Oh,
I snapped you an hour ago and you're not answering, but I can see you're active 5
oh,
minutes ago. So why aren't you
yeah.
answering me?
Those
And who are you
games.
talking to?
Yeah.
And then I see another friend online. So you two must be talking and then
Mhm.
you're ignoring me. And when I talk, like we talk about anxiety and stress and
Yeah.
mental health with kids, and it's too much. They're just way too involved in each
Oh,
other's
yeah.
lives. Like
Yeah.
I would phone you on my rotary dial phone when I was a kid. If you didn't answer, I just assumed you weren't home.
Yeah.
Right? And ride my bike
Yeah.
over and peek in your living room window to see if you're watching the phone
Yeah.
ringing. So
Yeah.
those are the things that I really try to focus on with kids is like it's okay to take a break from that. You don't
Mhm.
have to be. In fact, I had a girl in grade 11 come up and say to me recently, I so desperately want to go into ghost mode, which means you
Mhm.
disappear from the map on Snapchat.
Yeah.
And I said, so why don't you? She said, because my friends will get so mad at me.
Right.
And so I explained to her, in my humble opinion, if your friends are going to be mad at you for that, they're not your friends, right?
Yeah.
If a friend's a friend, they're going to respect your boundaries.
Yeah.
So if you say, listen, I just really need some space and I don't like everyone seeing where I am,
Yeah.
your friends will respect that. If a person doesn't respect it, they're probably not a friend, right?
Mhm.
But those are the kind of stresses. Those are the conversations I have all the time with kids.
Yeah.
If I don't take my phone to my room at night and answer my friend at 3 a.m, they get
Oh my
mad at me.
gosh.
And yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Oh,
younger, right?
yeah.
Parents are always shocked when I say like kids in grade 4, kids in grade
Mhm.
5, they're receiving intimate images from people.
Wow.
They're being asked to
Yeah.
send them. And the pressures are coming down to our elementary school kids.
So, what age would you suggest parents give their kids I would say a smartphone? Because I feel like a flip phone, I feel like you can give your kids a flip phone
Yeah.
anytime. Well,
Yeah.
more or less, but like an iPhone, like a smartphone,
That's
which
the
everybody
number.
gets. Like,
Yeah, that's the number one question I get.
yeah.
And the number one answer always frustrates people, but I can't tell parents what their values are. Everybody parents from their own values and their own beliefs. So I know for our kids, they got their first iPods when they were 13. They had
Okay.
limited access. They were only allowed an hour a day.
Because even those iPods, I realize that they're still
You can
just
do
connected to
everything.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
So it's still
exactly. Yeah.
WhatsApp, Snapchat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can do
Yeah.
everything you can
So
on a
how
phone.
old? 13?
13.
That's grade
And that
8?
is, yeah, that's also
Yeah.
the legal age to be on the apps, right? If you want to get into the technical legal
Oh,
side, it is 13 to be on
really?
Snapchat
That's
and
right.
Facebook. And
Interesting.
they didn't get their first phones till they were 16. And the
Okay.
reason they got a phone was because they were traveling for sports. So,
Yeah.
they might have a volleyball game in Russell. So then they
Mhm.
would have their phone so they could call if there was an emergency. My kids were always limited to the amount of time they could be online. I had the passcodes to all their devices, but they also had the passcode to mine. So
Okay.
that's, like I said, we have an open door policy in our house. So my
Yeah.
kids could go on my device. In fact, I think their face is probably still open my device. No phones in the bedroom, no phones at the
Mhm.
dinner table. Like we always tried to have, but the one thing that I try to explain to parents is don't parent because I said so. You're
Mhm.
not allowed your phone in your room. Why? Because I said so. Well, why don't we want them to
Oh,
have their phone in their room,
yeah.
right? You need a good night's sleep. You can get into the brain science. There's lots of documentation online. University of Manitoba has a great sleep study they did, looking at the effects of technology in the brain when people are
Mhm.
sleeping. And so, but we really tried to impress upon our kids, and this is what I try to say in my presentations. It's not about power and control. It's about making
Mhm.
decisions to help them be healthy. And sometimes kids can't regulate that.
Yeah.
So if you just have those rules in place where 10 o'clock, devices are
Yeah.
done, they're in the kitchen, you get them back in the morning,
Mhm.
then it becomes a lifestyle habit. And so, as your kids get older, because the reality is when they're young, they need lots of rules. As they get older, you got to let them go because
Yeah.
eventually they're going to grow up. And if you've had too big of a stranglehold, then it goes
Mhm.
almost the other way,
Oh,
right?
yeah. I've seen.
But the terrifying thing is how do you let them go in this
Yeah.
world when there's so many scary things
Mhm.
out there? But, if a 17-year-old, if you're still checking their phone every night and grabbing it out of their hand and opening their Snapchats, and then what happens when they graduate and go to university,
Yeah.
right? You're probably not going to I hope you're not going to follow them to their dorm room.
Some do.
Right. That's a whole other podcast. But yeah, so I mean,
Yeah.
I think the rules are important, but I think where we go wrong as adults is we don't take time to explain to kids
Mhm.
why the rules are in place,
Yeah.
right?
Have you ever had like parents kind of like argue with you or be mad or like my kid should have an iPhone at like grade 3 because of this?
I've never had a parent be angry. I have had a parent come up with lots of reasons why. Like,
Okay.
well, they have to have their phone in the room because it's their alarm clock. And then I always say $9.99 Walmart battery backup, you're
Yeah.
good to go, right?
Mhm.
But a lot of times, and this is not meant to be disrespectful, a lot of
Mhm.
times people become aggressive because they know on some level that
Yeah.
they probably need to tighten the reins a bit when it comes to the
Mhm.
rules. I've had people challenge. One of the things I try to impress on adults is not to put kids' photographs in public spaces.
Oh,
So
yeah.
profile picture and cover photo on Facebook is
Mhm.
considered public. So anything that you can see, you can take.
Yeah.
And sadly, there are websites around the world where pedophiles exchange
Wow.
images of kids back
Wow.
and forth.
Yeah.
And about 50% actually are taken off of social media because
Oh.
people don't have proper privacy. So sometimes parents I get a little bit of pushback about that one. And I'm not saying don't post your kids online. I'm just saying understand privacy,
Mhm.
know who your friends are, and don't post
Mhm.
them in public places, right?
Yeah.
Because I know we're all proud of our kids and grandkids and nieces and nephews, and you can be proud of them and you can
Mhm.
share, but be mindful of the
Yeah.
spaces you're sharing them in.
And like, I just think I've seen pictures on Facebook that like it's literally right when they come out of the womb.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
There's, right there. And then I've watched them like grow up.
Yes.
And once I saw it was like a friend of a friend I followed a long time ago. And I remember once I saw their daughter that was probably like in grade 8 at the time. And I was about to say hello. Like I was about to say hello. And then I realized, oh
She
my God,
doesn't
I've
know you.
never met her. I've just literally watched her
Yeah.
grow up.
Yes. I know. It is.
I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God.
They call that sharenting, like parents who just share
Yeah.
too much. And that is one
Yeah.
thing so you asked the question about pushback. So I would say
Mm.
probably this one rubs some people the wrong way. I'm a big believer in consent. So I think you should ask kids permission before you share them.
Yes. Yeah.
So my kids, for example, Liam and Christina, I don't share them unless I say, do you mind if I post this?
Yeah.
Or do you mind if I, send this to your Auntie Trisha or whoever, right? I
Right.
ask are you
Mhm.
okay if I do this? And I do think we need to get better at that with kids because it is their digital footprint. And maybe they don't
Yeah.
want that embarrassing picture, right? We
Mhm.
might think it's hilarious, but maybe they don't want that embarrassing picture out there
Yeah.
or, the picture of them literally coming out of the womb. I mean,
Yeah.
I am noticing a trend though that I'm super impressed by. I've been invited to a couple baby showers
Mm.
and right on the invitation, it'll say there will be no photographs posted on social media, which I love because
Yeah.
I think parents have a right to set that boundary.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we need to post
Yeah.
all these pictures of kids always online.
Yeah.
So
That kind of reminded me of, I feel like I don't really care as much now, but back in like the Facebook days, I felt like I'd go somewhere and usually I'd just go and just, I like to look nice, but sometimes I just wouldn't. I wouldn't,
yeah.
maybe I won't wear makeup or whatever. But then I'm like, oh shoot, this is going to be like plastered
Yes.
on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Or you get the dreaded you've been tagged in a
Yeah.
photo and you think,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
what have they unearthed? Especially if it's someone you went to high school with like 30
Yeah.
years ago and you're thinking,
And I'm
uh-oh,
like,
what did
yeah,
they
that's
find?
right. I
Yeah.
feel like that was really intense on Facebook for quite a few.
Yeah.
I've kind of let Facebook go these days. I'm more of an Instagram gal.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's so funny. During your sessions, you share the practical knowledge, the safety, the turning off of the, turning off of like who can tag you, your location. And then you also kind of gave some tips to parents, but you also launched into some pretty heavy stories. Like, what is your like purpose with those heavy stories? And if you wanted to share one that parents or the people had felt most impactful.
Yeah. The heavy stories, I carry a lot of kids with me when I speak. And the reason I share the heavier stories is because I really don't think people realize how serious this has become for kids. Like I touched on earlier with sexting and sextortion has become such a significant issue. And I'll give you an example of a story that I do share. And in fact, I did share that day of a young hockey player, 16 years old. People always say like kids should know better, right? This is probably a kid who should know better. He's heard me speak a half a dozen times at least.
Really?
And I know him personally.
Right.
But again, when kids are not thinking clearly, things happen. So he was sextorted online.
And for people who don't know, sextorting is...
So that's when a person sends you something intimate and then you respond with something intimate and they immediately use that against you to either pay the money or send more intimate material. So it's like extortion online, but with
Right.
the sexual component. So he had been sextorted. He had met a girl on Instagram. They had some spicy chat and things happened. And so they did ask for money. Now, in his situation, his parents don't allow him access to online banking, which is a recommendation I have. But he did. He came upstairs. He told his parents. They called me at midnight. I sent him a text message the next morning and told him that I don't think I've ever been prouder of a kid than I am of him,
Right.
because he did everything right. The mistake is done now. It's in the rearview mirror. We can't change it. What he did do right is he had the courage to come forward and say, look, I messed up and I need help.
And because he sent those pictures.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And so what they did is they took his picture and then put it in Instagram messages to hockey associations. And so he felt, so he wrote a testimonial after he went through this, which was shared in that presentation.
Right.
And he said that he thought his hockey life was over because they're sending, his photograph he thinks, which they're not sending them. They just make it look like they are. And he felt like he had ruined his life. But he said, I remember in Val's presentations to come and get an adult. And that's what I did. And I'm a kid and I make mistakes. And, I can learn from them. So very proud of him we're not going to stop mistakes from happening. Nobody's perfect, but we need, and that's where I go back to building that bridge. His parents did a very good job of building a bridge of trust so that when the critical error happened, he could come and say, I messed up. Now, sometimes parents will do all the right things and things still won't go the right way, right?
Yeah.
Part of my mission when I speak, I am concerned about the words and the language we use sometimes. So you'll hear very bold things like send a nude, ruin your life, post the wrong thing, you'll never get a job. I think we have to be very mindful of the words we use.
Right.
Because if a child has sent something or made a mistake, and then all they think about is, I sent a nude, I'm going to ruin my life. I'm not going to get into college. I'm not going to play hockey. It's very difficult for them to come back from that. And they feel in that moment like they ruined their life. We don't want to lose kids over this. And we've lost too many kids already. So I think having the conversations, removing the judgment, I try to walk parents through, step by step, what to do in those situations, who to reach out to, how to ask for help. Because the thing is, kids are going to make mistakes and we need to be prepared to help them with it.
Now, one of the stories that you shared, I'm not sure if you feel comfortable sharing it now, was the story that it didn't turn out well.
Yes. Yeah. So that is, and with his parents' permission, I do carry his story with him, or with me rather, and have since become very close with his mom, 17 years old, same thing, sextorted, but didn't see a way out. For me, it's a hard one because I had been scheduled to be in his school right before COVID hit. And then we had to cancel the presentation last minute. And at that time, I already was talking about sextortion. This is not something at the time this happened, wasn't something that was spoken about. And I don't think he had any knowledge of what was happening. And unfortunately, he just felt that there was no way to fix what had happened. And
so what happened with him? Like
he died by suicide.
Okay.
Yeah. Within about 3 hours of sending a naked photograph and then being threatened. He did pay money. He only had access to a limited amount of money, so did send that. But it all transpired so quickly. And that for me is, we never want to lose kids over anything, but I never want kids to feel like they can't fix a mistake.
Right.
That's a hard one for me.
Yeah.
I wear my snowflake, which represents Amanda Todd. And Amanda Todd was a young girl who had been speaking to someone online and had flashed her naked breasts. And most of the people my age remember Amanda Todd. I don't know if you remember Amanda. But so her story and Rehtaeh Parsons, they both kind of happened at the same time. And back in that time was sort of, I think it was around 2012, somewhere around there.
That sounds about right.
It was unheard of. Like nobody knew what sextortion was.
That was during Amanda Todd's.
Yes.
2012.
Yeah.
That
and
about right.
Rehtaeh Parsons was a young girl on the East Coast who was sexually assaulted at a party, and her assault was photographed and shared. And so those two, I remember when those two happened, it really rocked the nation because how could that possibly happen to kids? So these things are not new, but it has become so much more prevalent, I think, for kids. And boys are, I think the last statistic I read, 91% of all reports to CyberTip last year were boys between the ages of 11 to 17. So boys are at
Interesting.
risk. Boys and girls both are at risk for
Yeah.
sextortion. But the reporting side of it, there seems to be far more boys reporting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I have my philosophies on why
Yeah.
I think it is. I think we've done an incredibly good job at educating girls over the years. I think if you look for
Mm.
resources about online safety, it's almost always targeting girls. How do
Yeah.
we protect girls? How do we keep girls safe?
Yeah.
There's very little online for boys. I've
Mhm.
looked for when I do presentations and I want to use a visual, I can find lots of videos about girls and self-esteem.
Mhm.
Very difficult to find videos about boys and
Mhm.
self-esteem. I think we need to remove gender from conversations and just
Yeah.
talk about kids'
Yeah.
safety. I always ask when I speak to kids and adults, if a little boy and a little girl run down a hill and they both fall and they both cut themselves at the same time, who do we run to first?
Yeah.
And the answer is typically the
Mhm.
girl. And then when I ask why, well, girls need to be protected and boys need to be tough, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I would like to get rid of those age-old
Yeah.
stereotypes because,
Yeah.
when you look at the fact that men above the age of 40 are the number one most at risk to die by suicide
Yeah.
in our country,
Yeah.
very closely followed by boys under 16, we
Mm.
need to change the way we speak to and
Mhm.
about boys.
Yeah.
So I do try to weave a lot of that into my presentations. I want people to understand that boys can struggle with the same things that girls can. And,
Yeah.
they need to know that there's an avenue for them to
Mhm.
come forward as well.
That story that you told about, he was sextorted and then he did tell his parents
Yes.
and then the parents contacted you. Like you literally, saved a life.
Mm.
Let's for sure. Like, and even that other girl who saw your presentation and decided to break up with that guy.
Right. Yeah.
So those stories are huge.
Yeah.
And so even you were nominated
Oh,
for
yes.
the Women of Distinction Award.
Yes.
And obviously there were so many awesome women that
Yeah.
were nominated, and the person who won,
Oh,
I know her.
as soon
She's
as I saw her
awesome.
name, I'm like, really? The year I get nominated,
She's
Sarah has to be
awesome.
nominated. It's like the real life Gal Gadot in Brandon. Yeah.
She's incredible.
She's amazing. Yes, that was an
Yeah.
honor and an incredible evening. And
Mhm.
anytime that women can support women in my books is awesome. Like, I just
Yeah.
think it's all the different categories, all the different nominees. The 3 women who nominated me are
Mm.
all incredible women in that circle of women I have.
Mhm.
Tammy Ballingall, who she has supported me since the beginning. I think I did a presentation in Boulder School. She was the guidance counselor there like 13 or
Okay.
14 years ago.
Wow.
And just always a huge supporter of what I do. And we've developed this incredible relationship. Dana McCallum, who is a very dear friend of mine and the first ever female inspector for Brandon Police Service.
Oh.
Go, Dana. Talk about a world's like real life Gal Gadot.
Okay.
And Jolene Toder, who is just the most incredible woman and mother and
Mhm.
fierce. She's
What does
just
she do?
amazing. She owns her own business, JT Designs,
Okay.
and she's just an incredible human being. And I've never not seen her smile. She's had
Okay.
some difficulties to overcome over the years, and
Mhm.
never see her without this
Wow.
joyous heart and this incredible
Yep.
smile. So when women like that see me and
Mhm.
value the work that I do, that's
That's nice.
the win right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible honor for
Mhm.
sure. Yeah.
Now, you saying you've been doing this for 17 years.
Yeah.
Incredible. So 17 years. Gosh, what year was 17 years ago?
Oh, don't make me do the
I know,
math.
I can't do math.
A long time ago.
So what have you noticed from like kids growing up or parents? Is there like one big thing you've noticed has like changed drastically? What stands out to you from like doing this work
Yeah.
for 17 years?
I would say the biggest thing for me is like the issues that used to be high school kids are now middle years, and middle years are now elementary.
Mm.
When I started this, like literally there was Facebook and MSN Messenger and Kik. Like there wasn't so many platforms, right? Right around that 2010 to 2014 is where we had our TikToks and our which used to be Musical.ly, which nobody used.
Right.
And Snapchat and all the Discord, and when they all started coming online. But for me, I would say the biggest thing was COVID, because so many young
Oh.
kids were provided devices that I don't think normally would have had a device, but because they had to learn at home, they were given devices younger and
Wow.
younger.
Yeah.
And now those COVID kids are your grade 4 3, 4, 5, kind of that
Yeah.
age group. And I am seeing so much more in that age group. Like one of the most common answers I get when I'm speaking with the younger kids, I let them tell me what I should be worried about. And so I ask them what I should worry about when kids their age are on gaming sites. And one of the number one answers consistently is online dating.
Wow.
And so then we
Wow.
kind of
What
dig
age?
into that, right? And that's grade 3, 4,
Oh,
5,
no.
right? So we dig into
Val,
like,
tell me
I
it's not
know.
true.
I wish I could. But so then what is online dating? Well, you meet somebody and
wow.
then, sometimes they just date on the game,
Mm.
but sometimes they'll give them their Snapchat or their Discord and they'll communicate outside the game. And so of course, as adults, right away, we're like, that's
Yeah.
probably 54-year-old Val, not 12-year-old Billy. But for kids, they just don't see the danger because
No.
they think it's a
Yeah.
safe space for them to be in. And
Yeah.
again, going back to the whole stranger danger, these people are not mean to kids. They're very nice to
Yeah.
them. They compliment them. They fill a void, right? It's called grooming. So when they're on there, these people, of course, they're not mean to them. They're nice to them. So when we prepare kids for monsters, that's not what online grooming is. They're friendly and kind and full of compliments.
Oh,
and,
yeah. I see what
right?
you mean. Yeah.
And so the
Yeah.
kids are what's the danger in that? Billy's so
Yeah.
nice to me and he always compliments and he always asks me how my day is. And right,
Yeah.
they can't see the danger because I think as adults, we prepare kids for scary dangers.
Yeah.
And the online grooming world it becomes a scary danger, but it doesn't start that way, right?
Yeah.
Because they have to connect with the kids.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Like, they're nice.
Yes. Yep.
For the first bits. That's a good point to warn parents. So if a parent is listening right now and they're like super concerned, what would be like the 5, or we don't have to put a number, like what would be a couple of key takeaways for what they can do today?
First of all, my first recommendation is hold off as long as possible.
Okay.
So if there is younger parents that have younger kids, the Anxious Generation book is brilliant. He sort of has that
heard of that.
movement of trying to get a group of friends together to hold off. So hold off as long as possible. And then that way, when Nicole says, I'm the only person in the whole
Yeah.
world, you can say, well, no, because Val doesn't and Melissa
Yeah.
doesn't. And
Yeah.
so, become united as a group of friends and
Right.
have other things in your kids' lives. Get them outside, get them
Yeah.
doing chores and responsibilities and being part of groups and playing sports. And they don't have to play AAA hockey and
Yeah.
go to the NHL, but they can get out and get their bodies moving. Make sure they understand the importance of a good night's sleep. If you're going to give them devices, just have that a hard, fast rule from the start. It doesn't go in the bedroom.
Yeah.
It doesn't go in locked doors. They don't need to take them to the shower. They don't need to have them in the bedrooms, right? Just have those rules in place from the start, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Older kids, you can put the rules in place. It's just harder
Yeah.
when you've always let them do it.
Right.
But yeah, I would say hold off as long as possible. When you do provide it, have the rules around it. Look into options where, if your 13 or 14-year-old daughter's babysitting somewhere that doesn't have a house phone, a flip phone will do.
Yeah. Flip phones are fine,
Yeah.
right?
I know like Bark in the US is a wonderful option for kids. I don't know yet in Canada that we have much that I think honestly, if I could design the perfect world, nobody under 16 would be on social media and
Yeah.
nobody under 18 would have a device with a camera or access
Yeah.
to the internet. That would be, people ask me that all the time. That would be my perfect world for
Yeah.
kids online, right? No access to the internet or cameras
Yeah.
until they are adults.
Yeah.
But I don't get to design the world. So now we just have to kind of help parents put safety nets in place. But the most important tip I would have for parents is just have the relationship so that when something happens, because it's inevitable something is going to happen.
Yeah.
Make sure they can come to us without fearing that we're going to be disappointed in them. The one sentence I always encourage parents to say to their kids is this: there's not a single thing you will ever do that will make me stop loving you, because who you are and what you do are not the same. Kids have to know that from a young age because they do feel like they are defined by mistakes, and they're not. Right? At 54, I'm not defined by the mistakes I made when I was 12.
Right.
Thank goodness. And thank goodness there's no photographic evidence of them. Right? That's the beauty of being
my
middle-aged. All
gosh.
my stupidity occurred
Yeah.
long before the
Yeah.
internet. Yeah.
There's just a box
Yeah.
somewhere in
Somebody's
a
got
storage
those
unit.
pictures somewhere. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I have a lot of the
Yeah.
embarrassing ones of all my
Yeah.
friends. Yeah.
I wonder though if you mentioned about how like a group of friends all getting on board and deciding, let's not give this iPhones till this age.
Yeah.
I wonder if it's like, obviously the big schools probably can't, and parents would be like, no.
Yeah.
But like, that's such an interesting thought though, because it is just, that one kid in grade 4 gets the iPhone. And I've seen it when I've been in those classrooms,
Yeah.
and they're all like huddled around it. And like, then some kids are left out. I even felt that way when I was at a school, and the one like grade 2 or grade 3 girl got a training bra.
Yes.
And then all the other girls thought they had to get a training bra. I'm like, no, girls. I'm like, it's too young.
Yes. Yeah. As soon as somebody has it, it's like everybody needs to have it. Yeah.
It's interesting.
And you bring up such a good point, because that's another thing that I try to get parents to understand. You can lock them up and not allow them access. They don't get it at home. They're riding a school bus, they're seeing it, right? If they're having a sleepover, they're being exposed to it. So I think it's important from a young age to have conversations that include things like, if you see something online that makes you feel funny, gives you funny, because let's face it, sometimes if they're seeing things, it might not be scary, right? It might be confusing, might give them a little funny tickle in their tummy.
Yeah.
It's okay to come and talk to me about those things. Because even as an adult, I see things online that I kind of go, I'm not really sure I needed to see that. And you're not in trouble, because you're not responsible for what someone else puts out there, right? And just having those conversations, because if they are on the bus, and we had a situation once where a boy in grade 12 thought it was funny to show kids as young as kindergarten Pornhub on a bus. And so they potentially can be exposed to things that, so just having that open door that it's okay if you see things, right? You can come and talk to me. Hurts my heart too.
Because I worked at a summer camp a long time ago, and it was a similar thing. It wasn't part of my group. It was just something we heard about in a meeting later. We're all waiting on the bleachers, and the kids are just waiting for their parent pickup, and just some older boys, they weren't even that old, like grade 5 maybe. And they had the iPads just to have when they're waiting for their parents to pick up. And they were watching porn. Yeah. But some little kids were looking behind their shoulder and saw it. And I'm just like, how do you process that? Yeah. It just hurts my heart.
Yeah. And I mean, I come from the days where, somebody had a Playboy hidden behind the toilet in the downstairs bathroom, and you like have a peek at it. Oh, it's so racy.
That is so true. I actually did see a Playboy magazine behind, I won't say what it was, but like an older person. And I remember seeing, I'm like, wow, like those are really big boobs.
You had to do that.
And I'm like, I don't look like. Like, what is? I remember I was like, I looked through the whole magazine. What would you say is next for you? Like, what's lighting you up now? What's on the horizon?
I honestly, everybody always jokes, when's the book coming out?
Oh,
I would love to write a book. I just have no idea how to write a book. My plan is just to continue on. I've been a municipal counselor for 18 years. So I have decided that I am done at 20 years. So that will be 5 terms on council. I love my role on council, but I feel like 20 years is a long time to be in politics when you're not a big fan of politics.
Right.
I love my community and I love serving my community, but I don't play the political game well. So I have some aspirations of other things I would like to take on. But my biggest goal, and I always say I will retire when I hit this, is to somehow see safety information infused in the Manitoba school curriculum starting in kindergarten. So I had the opportunity to have coffee with the Minister of Education a couple of weeks ago, and just kind of a preamble of what, I'll give you an example. I asked a group of grade 2-3 kids to tell me the difference between a keep secret and a speak secret. And 2/3 of them had no idea what I was talking about. A
keep secret and a speak secret.
So a keep secret would be, Nicole, we're planning a birthday party for your mom. It's a surprise. I don't want you to tell her because it would ruin the surprise. Versus a speak secret would be somebody touches you somewhere on your body that your bathing suit covers, right?
Yes.
So it's those safety pieces I think would tie nicely in with the health curriculum, which is very outdated. And they are looking at some new curriculum pieces. My ultimate goal would be to see a lot of the safety information infused in the curriculum so that, because the problem, like there's programs like Kids in the Know, which is an amazing program, but it's supplementary to the curriculum. So it's not taught with the curriculum. Schools have it, but they don't it doesn't have to be taught.
Is that the movie that has like, my body's nobody's body?
No.
But She's like, no, stop.
Or
stop.
the No Secret Place. No, that's
I remember that.
Kids in the Know is a program that, and it's a wonderful program, starts in kindergarten, goes through to grade 12, talks about all of those safety pieces, but it's supplementary and it's not mandatory. So in some schools that I'm in, it is being used. It's being used very well. In other schools, it's kind of sort of being used. And then sometimes teachers don't want to do it. And so I would like to see those really important safety pieces infused right into the curriculum. So that would be one of the missions that I have, is to, and it doesn't have to be my information. It just, I would like to see more of the safety pieces put. I read a statistic recently that 50% of Canadian kids are not having their basic needs met at home, which means love, nurturing, right? Food, shelter, not basic needs like they're not playing hockey or they're not playing soccer. We're talking like the needs that every child should have met. And so if a child is coming to school and they're carrying something in their backpack that most adults can't fathom dealing with, how are they ever supposed to learn their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s, right? So we need to find a way to help kids give a voice to some of the issues that are going on. And something as simple as a keep secret and a speak secret, right? So that would be one of my goals. I jokingly said about the book, I don't know what I would write a book on. I did imagine I am the child of an alcoholic. So my dad was an alcoholic and then became sober and then counseled alcoholics and drug addicts for many years at the Addictions Foundation. So I've always envisioned creating a parenting program for children of addicts because it is, you do grow up differently in a home with addiction. So that's something that's on my bucket list of things. I sort of have mocked up what I would do in terms of a program for families. So I have lots of things that I would like to do. I'm just not sure.
Important. It's important work.
Yeah.
Like, and is there lots of people like you doing this, traveling in the schools?
No.
Like, yeah, that's interesting.
So when I started this initiative, like when I first went to my boss and said, like, we gotta do something for kids here because, you know, somebody needs to do it. It was, I would say, groundbreaking because nobody else was doing it. And then just the feedback was so overwhelming. The schools just jumped on board. And so I anticipated there would be lots of people educating. I've had, I've been in contact with people in British Columbia and Alberta. There doesn't seem to be a lot of it.
Interesting.
There are some speakers that will do certain programs. Some of them can be very expensive.
Right.
I know one organization, I think it's $5,000 for a 1-hour presentation. So that's very difficult for schools to be able to afford to bring something like that in. So there's definitely things out there, but in terms of like packing up and heading to a community and spending 16 hours there's not a lot of that going on.
Maybe you could start a recruiting and training.
Yeah, I've talked about that.
Yeah.
I will be honest, my biggest hiccup with that is this is my baby.
Yes,
and it's so important to me that it would have to be absolutely the right person that I felt could take it. And, you know, I work very hard at making sure that my message is always consistent and I try very hard to understand the needs of the people in the audience. And, you know, so I would definitely, I know I should say Gord Olson with the ICE unit, the Internet Child Exploitation Unit, is a remarkable human. And his unit will do educating, but they are very short staffed and very busy. So they're not currently doing any educating in Manitoba right now, which is unfortunate because they do a lot of really good presentations for kids as well. So, yeah.
Well, book Val. Val's coming to a school near you. Because honestly, I feel like a guest, what do you call it? Guest speaker, motivational speaker, like somebody that's not your teacher.
Yes. Yeah.
Even if your teacher's the best, like sometimes kids just need somebody else.
Yeah.
A different face to connect with. I remember even being a teacher in a school and we had this, I keep saying motivational speaker, but like a speaker of some sort.
Yep.
And even some of those things he said, like you just remember. I don't know why, but it just stays. Maybe because they're good at what they do. Good speakers.
There you go.
But well, anyways, Val, like thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having this. Is so like honestly sitting talking to you, aside from like the awkward holding a microphone.
I need to get a couch.
I know it just feels so. You're very good at what you do.
Well,
and
thanks.
I appreciate you asking me to be on your podcast. This has been awesome.
Yeah, it's been good. And I look forward to that book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that
I'll
something you
sit-
want to do? The book?
It is something I
Yeah.
would want to do. I think
Mhm.
it goes back to that confidence piece. I'm like, what is
Yeah.
it that I would have to say that
Oh, yeah.
would be
Yeah.
valuable enough
Oh,
to be
yeah.
in a
There's
book?
definitely
So definitely have some thinking to
Just
do
gotta
about
write.
that. But
There's a book I can give you called How to Write a Book in 30 Days. it's a thing.
there you go.
You just write, don't edit, just write, let it
Yeah.
flow. It'll come.
I just have too many things I want to say. That's the
Yeah.
problem. I would have to narrow
Yeah.
it down to what
Yeah.
specifically I want to talk about. Maybe someday. You'll get a copy.
Yeah. Signed copy. And that's the end of the episode. Thanks again for hanging out with me. If you're walking away with your mind a little bit blown, or maybe just feeling a little more prepared to tackle the wild world of kids and tech, do me a favor and share this episode with a friend who needs to hear it. We all know someone who's battling the endless screen time struggle. I'll drop the link to Val's presentation and her socials in the show notes so you can check her out and learn more about the incredible work she's doing. And hey, stick around for a few minutes because you know I can't get through an episode without something going a little bit off the rails. Bloopers are up next, and I promise they're worth it. And last thing, if you have a second, feel free to follow me on Spotify and Instagram. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next time. There we go.
Holy.
Oh my God, what time is it? I don't know.
I don't even know. I don't have my phone.
I
up
feel
here.
like my podcasts keep getting longer and longer. Flip is in the right side.
Yeah, get the right hair flip for the right side.
Yeah, like I said, I really enjoy how you're embracing your curly hair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well-
Have you always done that? One of these days, I'll hire somebody.
Yeah, to be your camera
Because or else I'm
person.
like thinking about
Yeah.
one of these days, one of these days. I always laugh after I look at my sheet.
Cheat sheet. It's like 4-H speeches all
No,
over again, but you
no,
never did it.
what?
So
I did do a 4-H speech once and I
Oh.
bombed it. I literally bombed it. It was on Beanie Babies. And I had my
you are
whole house.
aging yourself.
I had my whole dollhouse and I had Beanie Babies and I was very confident. I practiced. I got up there. I choked.
Yep.
I literally whispered. I was like, I have this Beanie Baby and it likes to be in this little house. And yeah.
Oh, I love it.
choked. My parents were like, what?
The infamous Beanie Baby joke. Oh boy.
Maybe that's what, yeah. Anyways, we'll get back to that. So